Joining us now from Rafah right now is Scott Anderson. He's the director of UNRWA Gaza. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, UNRWA is the UN agency that delivers aid and relief to Palestinians. This was happening before the war and continues to happen now. The UN and the White House have both said that Israeli plans to protect civilians in Rafah were unsafe and inadequate. Israel has been telling Palestinians to move to another location where they have promised medical aid, they've promised tents. What are you seeing on the ground?
What we're seeing on the ground this morning or this afternoon here is that there are 1.5 million people in Rafah that are scared. Most of them are starting to move. I see people packing up all their belongings and starting to move west and starting to move north, even in neighborhoods where there aren't evacuation orders. Most of these people have already been displaced 4, 5, or 6 times. So for them, it's just another displacement. But what we are seeing is people are scared, people are moving, and they're worried about what's coming for them in the future.
And are they going to locations where there are facilities to support them? Or is that, to use the word facilities, is that like a non-existent thing at this point?
Facilities may be overstating what's available to people. The Mawasi area, where the IDF have declared a humanitarian zone, is mostly sand. There isn't any infrastructure. There's no sewage. There's no water. People are also moving to Khan Yunis, but it's still recovering from an operation and a battle that took place between Hamas and the IDF there recently. So there's not a lot of infrastructure in place, and everything that we're doing is going to require us to use trucks to bring food, water, and medicine to people and take care of them wherever they are and wherever they choose to be.
Well, speaking of that, on Wednesday, you said there is no aid coming into the Gaza Strip. As we know, there were 2 areas where aid was coming in. One to the north had been bombed, closed, and then, as the last I heard, reopened. The other area to the south, where Egypt is, on the Gaza side, Israelis have taken over that area. What is happening in terms of aid? What are you seeing?
Well, unfortunately, what we're not seeing is aid entering Gaza at the moment. We need to see aid coming in. Kerem Shalom is open but not functional because of the security concerns around the operation taking place in East Rafah. And the terminal between Rafah, Gaza and Rafah, Egypt has been closed, so no fuel has also been entering. Now, I mentioned that we need trucks to deliver aid to people, be that food, water, or medicine, and without fuel, we can't do that. We also can't run the generators that keep hospital lights on and keep electricity running to incubators for babies. And then without food coming in, at some point we'll run out of food and there won't be anything to distribute to people. So what we really need is Kerem Shalom, which is the primary landline and the primary lifeline for Gaza, to reopen and to get things in at scale so we have quantity, quality, and diversity of food. And for the Rafah gate to reopen so fuel can come in so we can keep everything moving and keep our response going forward.
And so then what are people doing? What are you doing to get by day to day? I imagine the resources that you have right now, are you limiting just how much you distribute? How does this get done?
Well, it gets done by you just do the best you can every day. We have an impressive team. We have 4,000 staff working for UNRWA. We work very closely, for example, with the World Food Program on food, and we distribute what we have to people. We do not hold back. We do not ration. There's nothing good that comes from doing that, and we intend to stay and deliver. Right now, we're staying and delivering, but if we don't get aid in, we'll be unable to deliver, and we would just be staying. But it's important that we're here. It's important that we can take care of people. And what we need is funding to buy food and for food to enter so we can continue to take care of people on the ground. As we mentioned, 1.5 million here in Rafah, and almost 600,000 of them are children.
So, as you know, there are talks on and off in regards to the possibility of a ceasefire. Should that happen, do you have the resources and the ability to start bringing aid in, the aid that is needed, as quickly as possible?
Yes, we do. We have a lot of aid right now in Egypt. The supply line remains quite functional and full of food from Port Said to Al Arish. And that's where it's kind of stopped at the moment because of the challenges we're having with the security environment on the ground. But should there be a ceasefire, and many people in Gaza are praying for a ceasefire, we could respond at scale almost immediately and get things to people that very much need them, including food, water, and medicine, not only here in the south, but also in the northern part of Gaza, where conditions have been much worse for everyone.
I want to ask you about something else. Congress has blocked U.S. funding of UNRWA through 2025 following claims by Israel that members of the organization were working with Hamas. Some other countries, as you know, previously halted funding, but that funding has resumed for many of those countries. I'm curious about the impact that has had on aid efforts and how you're feeling about that lack of funding.
I mean, certainly we could always use more funding, and we're very hopeful that the U.S. and the U.K. will resume funding. They're the last two countries that have not. The Kelowna report was recently issued with some recommendations that we accepted all of them, and we hope that by implementing all those recommendations that we can get the U.S. to resume funding. The U.S. has a very outsized role for UNRWA. They're the largest donor by far throughout our history. And we very much need them to come back so we can continue to take care of people, as well as we need funds from our other donors, as I said, to continue to buy food and to continue to feed the 2 million people that live in Gaza.
Before we let you go, UNRWA's headquarters in Jerusalem are closed after arsonists attacked the building. Do you know anything about that? Any idea when it may reopen, and just sort of your reaction to that?
Well, it remains closed for now, and my reaction is it's something that's very dangerous. Setting a fire to a compound could cause a lot of injuries, could cause death to people, and quite scarily, there is a underground fuel tank there that, if it had exploded, would have caused a lot of damage, injuries, and possible death to the neighborhood. So what we would ask is that Israel ensure security is provided, and that the UN, including UNRWA, should be able to operate safely in Jerusalem, in Gaza, or in the West Bank.
Scott, I have one more question for you. We've been obviously covering this war since it started. We covered the October 7th massacre. People all over the world are seeing these images coming out of Gaza, and they've been seeing it for months now. I don't know sometimes if the images and the words have the same impact. I want you to give us something lasting that you want us to remember. When we're watching the news, when we're hearing the stories, what is it that you really want us to know about the situation in Gaza?
I think it's that innocent people are suffering. Most people are very much the same all over the world. They just want a better life for themselves, for their children, and to have a future. And what you see now is people that do not have a future. It'll take decades to rebuild Gaza, to give people an opportunity to try to have a better life for themselves, for their families, and that this war is having a real impact on people, on their ability to survive, on their ability to take care of their families, and on their ability to take care of their children. It has to be incredibly frightening, and I've talked to many parents who feel powerless because they cannot care for their children, they cannot protect their children. They don't see anywhere that Gaza is safe. And the thing that I guess I'd like everybody to remember is we're here to protect innocent civilians and children. And that's the images you're seeing run counter to that goal of what we're trying to do.
Scott Anderson, thank you very much.
Thank you.